Hi, my name is Sarah Schulman and I am one of the founders of In With Forward. It's a pleasure to be joining you virtually. In With Forward is a small social design shop. We've worked internationally, including with the British government, to try and turn our social safety nets into trampolines. And so we're a design and social science team that works with nonprofits and governments to redesign new kinds of social services from the ground up. We're currently working with the government in the province of British Columbia, as well as with the federal government in Canada, around cognitive disability, homelessness, and drug addiction. Design can contribute to innovation capability in government in a number of different ways. It can help to ask the right questions. So, we're all limited by the framing of the problems that we come into the policy process with. Design can help us to broaden the focus and to understand in the context in which, your actual citizens are, what's actually going on and what is it that is required. Design can also help to make things tangible. It can help to visualize things that are often a bit abstract or ethereal and put it into a format that then people can react to and provide better feedback about. And lastly, design can help us to make and prototype. And that's not just rhetoric or a buzzword, but actually it's a process, it's a mindset, it's a way of, rather than sort of trying to plan everything up front and hope that it's perfect when you roll or implement something out, to actually start at a small scale and reduce the risk of things going wrong by trying out new policy interventions before scaling them. So here in Canada, we've been working with about 400 frontline deliverers and civil servants over the past couple of years to build their capacity to be able to innovate from the ground up. And we're learning a few things about what kinds of capabilities are really required. I think the first kind of capability is the ability to ask really good questions and to identify what assumptions are there. And so really, how do you build that capability to gather good intelligence? And that means going to the source of where a so-called problem is being experienced, getting out of Whitehall, getting out of the meetings and the experts that you've brought in. That's one perspective, but really going to the source itself. So that's a capability set. Another capability set is, the ability to be okay with uncertainty and emergence. And this is, I think, a tough thing inside a civil service that is predicated on knowing the answer, on reducing risk by trying to have everything figured out ahead of time. If you're really going to adopt these kinds of methods, you have to acknowledge that the answer will unfold as you make and test things. And that's truly what a co-creative process is all about with citizens. And another kind of key capability set is to measure the right things. And so how can government become more attuned to measuring what matters, not just the things that are easy to measure? So not just measuring satisfaction, not just measuring outputs or the number of things that you do, but actually measuring outcomes and what those things add up to. And we're strong believers that if government starts to measure things that are more important and build that into your commissioning or contracting cycle, that will drive more innovation on the front end. So if you're looking for a good international example, we'd like to point you to work happening here in British Columbia and Canada. For the past 2.5 years, we've been collaborating with 3 large nonprofit service providers, as well as with the government agency in charge of adults with a developmental disability, to rethink a part of the service system. So some context, for many people who have an adult who have a disability, they might be relegated to a day program. And so for a segment of people, they find that they're doing the same activities on repeat. They're safe, but they're not developing, they're not learning, they're not connecting into community, and they're requiring higher and higher levels of support over their lifetime. And so we started by doing original ethnographic research, so actually living with people and their families with a disability and trying to understand how could we craft a different type of response. And so what we've ended up with is something called Kudos. It is a platform for adult learning and discovery, and it's a little bit like Airbnb. So every day an adult with a disability can log on. They can see experiences being offered in their local community, all provided by volunteers, by local community members who are really passionate about the things that they do, and they can start to stitch together hopefully a more meaningful trajectory and build their social network. And there's some really important features of this innovation that I think other governments can take note of: how to build informal support systems. So at its heart, what we're doing here is really shifting away from paid professional support to really engaging community members as supporters and advocates of that process. We're also learning how to create platforms rather than services. And that's an important difference. How can government get out of the business of just being the sole service provider and instead be much more of a base on which other people can offer things that are of value? And what we're also testing here in BC is how to commission or contract for platforms rather than direct services. And so we've been working with them to actually prototype a new contracting process, a process that will allow for more indirect hours for dollars to flow to that, but also which will start to measure things other than just the amount of services delivered. So I think this is a really good case study of how to do bottom-up innovation. Starts with a population group, is all about testing a new kind of service delivery model, but ultimately is about procurement and commissioning and measurement, and how to think much more coherently about all of those pieces of the puzzle. So you ask what role the Cabinet Office might play in ensuring a kind of fit-for-purpose innovation capability. I think there's at least three things. One, you could follow what the Canadian government is doing, which is mandating that each of its ministries or departments spend 10% of their budget on experimentation and trial and error, and really explicitly reporting out to citizens about that process. You could also make it much easier for departments to collect the kind of front-end intelligence required to get to innovative policies. If you really want different results, then you need different insights, and so you need different kinds of data sources. And not just quantitative data and not just data from consultations, but really good in-context ethnographic data. So you could broker departments to people that can provide that. You can increase the legitimacy and visibility of that kind of data and evidence as part of the policymaking process. And three, I think you can really upskill folks within your departments, but also within the whole social service delivery chain to be able to continuously innovate. This isn't about just investing in a process that delivers an innovative solution. To keep things being innovative, your whole sector, public and social sector, requires some different skills, some ability to completely iterate and tweak things when they're not working, as well as to do research and development in an ongoing basis, not just as part of a project cycle. And so in Canada, we've been working, again, with lots of civil servants and frontline deliverers to try and ensure that they've got a next generation set of skills so that they're not just stuck implementing stuff, but they can really be active agents in experimenting and trying out new things when something doesn't work.